So today, everybody knows that after Pesach, between Pesach and Shavuos, the custom in Jewish communities is that we learn Pirkei Avos, the ethics of the fathers, every Shabbos or week another chapter. So last Shabbos was Perek Aleph, the first one, and this Shabbos we're going to learn chapter 2, Pirkei Avos Perek Beis. And I want to focus on Pirkei Avos Perek Beis, Mishna test, actually Mishna test. There's a few versions, some put it at a later Mishnah, but many of them is Mishna tests. That's the middle of the second chapter, and it's a fascinating Mishnah. We'll also see it's also connected to the portions of the week, Tazria Mitzayra, which this year coincides with this chapter. And the discussion in this chapter is, in the previous Mishnah, just to give the context, the Mishnah mentions one of the greatest sages whose name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi Yochanan the son of Zakkai, and he was a student of Hillel and Shammai. And in the previous Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a student of Hillel and Shammai, says, he used to say, the Mishnah says, he used to say, Lamadat Torah harbe, if you learned a lot of Torah, don't become arrogant from it. This is the purpose of your creation. The next Mishnah seemingly goes off on a tangent and starts discussing history. And here's the history. Chamisha Talmidim Hayu Loyle Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students. Ve'elohein, these are their names. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Eliezer the son of Hyrcanus, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya, Yeshua the son of Hananya, Rabbi Yossi Akayin, Rabbi Yossi was a Kayin, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel, Rabbi Shimon the son of Nesanel, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and Rabbi Elazar the son of Arach. So the Mishnah now says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has 5 students. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, he's also known as Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, the great Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya, Rabbi Yossi Akayin, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Hu haya mayna shvachan. You see on the bottom below the Hebrew, there's an English translation I put in. He, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, used to count or list their shvach, their praise, their outstanding virtues. And this is what he said. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, bor sud she'ena ma'abetipa. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Hyrcanus, he is a plastered cistern which does not lose even a drop of water. Bor is a cistern, like a pit. Sud is, it's plastered. It's plastered so well that even a drop of water doesn't leak out, doesn't get lost. That's how he described the first student of Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, which means he retains everything. He forgets not even a drop of water that I put into him. He is like a cistern, but a solid one that contains and retains everything without losing even one drop, which obviously describes what type of memory he had, what type of mind he had, his ability to listen, his ability to absorb, his ability to retain, and not just retain, but retain literally everything. It's important to emphasize that this is the time, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says this, the oral tradition has not yet been put on paper. The Torah Shebaal Peh was still called, was really called Torah Shebaal Peh because it was Torah that was given over Baal Peh, mouth to mouth, face to face, teacher to student. It was not yet written. Only a few generations afterwards, generation of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, he would be the editor of the Mishnayos, and he's the one who would put down all the traditions and halachas from the generations onto paper, and that would become the Mishnah, the first official text of Torah Shebaal Peh. So the fact that Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus retains everything is an incredible feat, and very, very important, especially in that era. Next, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya. Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Hananya, Ashrei Yoladotay. Happy is the woman who gave birth to him. That's what he said about him. Fortunate, Ashrei, fortunate or lucky or how great or happy is Yoladotay, the one who was moiled him, the one who gave birth to him. Obviously, he's such a special, fine person that the mother who gave birth to him must be truly fortunate and happy. Rabbi Yosef HaKohen, the third student, Rabbi Yosef, who was a priest, he was a Kohen. He just said one word, chassid. He's a chassid. Chassid, obviously from the word chesed, a truly kind, pious, generous, outstanding human being. Reb Shimon ben Nesanel, Reb Shimon, the son of Nesanel, the fourth student, Yirei Chet, is somebody who fears sin. Reb Elazar ben Arach, the fifth one, Reb Elazar, son of Arach, Kemayon HaMizgaber. He's like a spring that is continuously vibrating with ever-increasing force. Mayan is a wellspring. HaMizgaber, it's always vibrating, it's always flowing with gvura, with strength, with might. It never ceases. That's Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Okay. Hu haya the teacher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, used to say, Im yiyu kol Yisrael b'chaf moiznayim, ve'Eliezer ben Hyrcanus b'chaf shniya machriya es kulam. If all the sages of Israel were on one scale, they were on one scale of the balance, and Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. In other words, his qualities, his virtues would outweigh all the other sages, even though it's 4-1. He actually says all the sages may even be more than 4. Abba Shaul, Omer Mishmai. Abba Shaul, who was also a sage, he was called Abba Shaul, literally means a borrowed father, an interesting name, said in his name, Im yiyu kol yischach me'yisol b'chaf me'znayim, v'Reb Eliezer ben Hyrcanus afimam, v'Reb Eliezer ben Arach b'chaf shniya, machriya es kulam. If the sages of Israel were on one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was with them, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach was on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. So we have here two versions of what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said. Either he said the first student, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, the cistern that's plastered, that doesn't lose a drop, that would outweigh them all. Or Rabbi Shaul quoted him, Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, who is the wellspring that is always vibrating and flowing, he would outweigh everybody. Okay. Amar lahem. The Pirkei Avos continues. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to these 5 students, Tzu'u, go out, uru'u, and observe, ezi derech tova sheyidbak ba ha'adam, which is the right way to which a person should cleave. What's the path a person should cultivate? This is a challenge he gives these 5 great students. Rabbi Eliezer says, ayin tova, a good eye. To be able to have a good eye, a guta oig. That's Rabbi Eliezer, the first student. Rabbi Yeshua says, chaver tov, nothing like a good friend, a good companion, a good pal. Rabbi Yosef says, shachin tov, a good neighbor. Reb Shimon says, the fourth student, haraya es hanoilad, foresight, somebody who has vision, somebody who sees that which will be born, even though it's not present. And the last one, Rabbi Elazar says, leiv tov, a good heart. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to them, Roya ani es divrei Elazar ben Arach medivreichem, shebechlal dvarav divreichem. I somehow prefer, or have a proclivity, or a special sensitivity to the words of Elazar ben Arach, for his words include also your words. In other words, from all the choices, a good eye, and a good friend, and a good neighbor, and foresight, he says, I choose the 5th one, a good heart, because in the good heart, you already have included the other 4 as well. That's basically the story brought here in Pirkei Avos about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his 5 students. It continues with the opposite, in which he says to them, go out and see which is the most negative attribute that a person can cultivate. And they come back, and Rabbi Eliezer says, an evil eye, and Rabbi Yeshua says, not a good friend, and Rabbi Yosef says, not a good neighbor, and Rabbi Shimon says, somebody who borrows and doesn't pay back, which means no foresight, and Rabbi Elazar says, again, a heart that is negative, not a good heart, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, again, prefers his insight. Now, let's delve a little bit into this Mishnah and think about it. The first thing is, Pirkei Avos is a very interesting tractate in Mishnayos, but the common denominator of all the 5 and 6 chapters is that it's basically teaching a person ethics, truths, midos tovos, proper behavior. The Gemara says in Maseches Baba Kama Daf Lamed, man de leboy laheve chasida l'kayim milah da'avos, somebody who wants to be a chassid, meaning somebody who wants to live a pious and good and decent and noble life, should learn Pirkei Avos and should implement it. Because Pirkei Avos already from the beginning is basically a teacher, but it's not a teacher of technical laws, it's a teacher of personality issues, dispositions, characteristics we to work on, things to be cautious about, things to cultivate, and so forth. You don't have anywhere else in Pirkei Avos a Mishnah that is just dedicated to a teacher giving compliments to his students. It's a wonderful thing. The Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai starts telling 5 students, he's enumerating their praises. It's wonderful. But how does it fit into the genre of Pirkei Avos? The genre of Pirkei Avos is not history, nor is it a diary about the relationship between a particular teacher and his students. And yet we have a whole Mishnah that tells us the story that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students. If you really want to talk about everybody's students, there were hundreds of teachers who had hundreds and thousands of students. So you can go through all of the Chachmei HaMesorah. The Rambam in his introduction to Mishnah Torah goes through 40 generations from Moshe Rabbeinu till Reb Ashi. Who was the teacher? Who was the student? But the Mishnah Pirkei Avos doesn't do that. It starts off right away, Moshe Kibbel Torah Messina, and goes fast all the way to Anshe Knesset HaGdolah and Shimon HaTzadik. And over there, it's to tell you how the tradition worked. Here, it's just about 5 students. And then, he just tells you, he counted the praise of these 5 students. How does it come into Pirkei Avos? That's question number 1. Doesn't seem to fit the genre of the ethics of the fathers. Number 2, before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, there were many great rebbes, many great teachers and leaders and sages. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai himself was a student of the great Hillel and the great Shammai. Hillel himself had 80 students, the Gemara says in Sukkah. He had Yonasan ben Uziel, his oldest student, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, his youngest student. Everybody, that's how the Torah was transmitted from teacher to student, from teacher to student. It says in Talmud Yerushalmi that the Torah is like Kidar Voinos, and the Pasuk says, and the Talmud Yerushalmi says it's like a Kadur Bonois, it's like a ball that a girl throws to another girl to pass it on. In other words, every teacher took the ball, like the baton, and passed it on through the ball to the next, and they catch it, they make sure you have it, and then you throw it on to the next generation. Kadur Bonos, Kedar Voinos. Why is he the only one who's complimenting his students? So you say others also did, but somehow the Pirkei Avos, it's the one story we have, that he's the one who was praising his students. There were hundreds of generations before him, and certainly after him. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lived even before the Mishnah was written, but this story is said about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Another interesting thing is, when Rabbi Yeshua is praised, how does he praise him? Ashrei Yeladeto. He speaks about his mother. Now it's nice to speak about a mother, but he can speak about everybody's mother. With him, he doesn't talk about his qualities. It's almost like he's speaking about his mother's qualities. In a way, you can even say he's not talking about him. He's talking about his mother. Now, they all had wonderful mothers who raised them. But over here, he speaks about Ashrei Yeladeto. He doesn't just say, though, fortunate is his mother, or fortunate is his father, or fortunate is his parents. He uses the word Yeladeto. Fortunate is the one who gave birth to him. But why don't you talk about the qualities, the virtues? He doesn't say that. With Reb Shimon ben Esanel, he says Yirei Chet, he fears sin. Now that's an interesting thing, because all of the sages, one of the prerequisites for being in the Sanhedrin, for being one of the sages, is that you have Yirei Shamayim. If you don't have that integrity, that ethical sensitivity, so then the scholarship is pretty much worthless. But with Reb Shimon ben Esanel, he emphasizes Yirei Chet. He feared sin. Obviously, there was something special about Reb Shimon ben Esanel, different than the other ones. And then there is the argument, if he held that Rebbe Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is the greatest, because he is a cistern that doesn't lose a drop, or he held that Rebbe Eliezer ben Arach is the greatest, because he's a mayan amiskaber. He's not a cistern that doesn't lose a drop, but he's a well that doesn't stop flowing with ever-increasing strength. So how are we supposed to understand all of this? The truth is that this Mishnah does fit into Pirkei Avos. It's not just a story about a sage who had 5 students and he decided he's going to compliment them. And in Pirkei Avos, we have to hear about their compliments, which is a wonderful thing, but doesn't seem to fit into a book that's instructing us about ethics and about behavior and about disposition. But what if this Mishnah is actually teaching a very, very profound lesson that does guide a person, especially in the world of pedagogy and mentorship and leadership and education? What the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is telling us is, how does one raise students, disciples, children, grandchildren, talmidim, talmidos, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai raised? And why him? Why him? So before we get to why him, let's understand what the Mishnah is telling us. And we have here clear, very powerful guidance that what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood is hu haya moina shvachim. Moina means count. He would count their praises. Now it's an interesting expression. You count money. Maybe you count how many eggs you have. You have to make muffins and you need a certain amount of eggs. You count how many eggs you have. You count how many tomatoes or cucumbers you have for the salad. People count things that are countable. What does it mean? He counted their praises. He had a sheet and he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But this is essential to the entire message here. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't just say, I have amazing students. He didn't even just tell them, you guys are outstanding. I love you. I cherish you. You are creme de la creme. You're the best of the best. That's also wonderful, but he did something much more than that. Hu haya moina shvachim. Like when you count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He specified and he counted and he elaborated in a very detailed and specific way each one of their praises. He didn't compare one to the other. He didn't say, you're all just wonderful kinderlach, wonderful students, I'm lucky to have you, which is also a wonderful thing to say. But haya moina, like an account where you have to be specific and particular. Counting doesn't refer to the collective. You say there's a big crowd here. How many? Oh, it's a huge crowd. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. What he showed to each of the students is he showed to them their strengths. He mirrored to them who they were. He allowed them to hear from him and to see in him what he saw in them, understanding that that's the way they're going to be able to see it in themselves. By having a teacher who truly believed in them, and not just believed in them in a general, all-encompassing way and gave nice feedback and comments, but somebody who can really pin it down, somebody who can really get down to the details. It wasn't just general positive reinforcement. Yeah. Oh, so you're saying l'chayra ashrei yoladetay is very general. The other ones are more specific. Very good. That was our question. Ashrei yoladetay seems very general. Why don't you speak about his midos, his qualities, his virtues, his chachma? Good question. We're going to get to that in a moment. Right? Yirei chet also seems, okay, he fears sin, perhaps in a unique way. And that's what we learn from here. When we try to lift up somebody, we try to compliment somebody in a very positive way, I could do it in a very general way. You know, you're cute, you're adorable, you're angelic, you're such a good, which is all good. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai teaches us something much more. Yes, that's another interesting thing. Haya, hu haya moina shvachim. It's not that he did it once. Haya, like it says, hu haya ayim. He would always do it. This was not something, once in 20 years, when the shadchan called, he said something nice. Haya, this was a constant thing. He was always looking out for it. He always saw it. He identified it. He emphasized it. He made a shturim. He made a ruckus about it. This was his thing. And he would bring it out. He would bring it out not just in words, in actions, in most importantly perhaps, in body language, in gestures, in the way you communicate to each of them. And because he did this on a constant basis and in a very genuine and authentic way, they began to see that in themselves. He mirrored to them what he wanted they should be able to mirror to themselves. He showed them what they should be able to see in themselves. So of course this belongs in Pirkei Avos, because it's teaching you how to inspire people, how to empower people. The first thing is you have to be able to see the goodness. The second thing is you have to be able to celebrate it. I could see something and then go to sleep. Be able to celebrate it, talk about it, get excited about it, dance with it, and then help them dance with it. So first of all, it's seeing it, it's noticing it, and then it's communicating it. And it's not just communicating it once, but it's a lifestyle that is engaged and dedicated to that type of communication. Why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Every teacher. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was in a unique moment of history. Why? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as I mentioned, was a student of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were the Zugais, they were the great sages that lived close to the end of the era of the second Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the year 70 after the Common Era. Now we're in the year 2023. In the year 2070, right? 2070, it's going to be exactly 2,000 years. Because it happened in 70, so 2070 is CE, after the Common Era, not BCE. BCE is before zero. In the secular calendar, zero officially begins the year that Oisi Ha'ish was born. Whether that's Mamish the year or it's not Mamish the year is a separate issue. But the year zero begins the year officially that he was born. No. If he was killed by the Romans, he was crucified by the Romans in his 30s, so that would be approximately the year 30 or 36 Common Era, which means exactly 30, 40 years before the Churban Bayis Sheni, which coincides generally with history. Now, there's a lot of, not everything is so clear, and there's a lot of debates in terms of the exact history, but that's when the year zero begins in their tradition. In fact, BCE and CE usually stands for something else, but we call it the Common Era. There's other acronyms for it. It's not for this class. Huh? AD. AD is completely different. That I usually don't say. CE. So the year zero starts that calendar. Our calendar, Jewish calendar, of course, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the year. Very good. Very good. Huh? But just a drop. 38, 28, or 38, 29, or 38, 30. Right. A few hundred years over, you're talking about the construction of it. Now, was the Beis HaMikdash destroyed in the year 70, or the year 69, or the year 68? There's a few versions, but it's one of those few years. In the Jewish calendar, that would be the year 3,830. So it's very different than 70. The secular calendar, that's 70. By us, it's already 3,830 years since creation. Because our calendar doesn't begin with the birth of a Jewish kid, but one Jewish kid. Yeah. So some say it was 28, 29, or 30, which in the English would be 68, 69, or 70. Rabbi Yochanan, who was the leader of the Sanhedrin? Which means who was the spiritual leader of the Jewish people during this time? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And the Gemara Maseches Gittin tells a fascinating story how Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai felt that it's impossible for the Jews to fight the Romans. It's simply not going to work. And he felt that they have to engage and talk to the Romans. There were the Zealots, the Kanoim, the Sikrikim, who said absolutely not. And they staged a revolt. They burned the grain in Jerusalem, so it would force the Jews to go to war. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a very different opinion. He sneaked out of Jerusalem, and the only way he can do it is he feigned his death, and they took him out in a coffin to make believe they have to bury him, and he was really alive. And he went and he met Vespasian, Aspasionis. Now that's a fascinating thing, because Aspasionis at the time was the commanding general of the Roman legions coming to conquer Jerusalem. But later he would become the emperor of Rome. He would go back to Rome, succeeding Nero. And he would send his son Titus to go destroy the actual Beis HaMikdash. Vespasian was the father of Titus. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai met Vespasian. And Vespasian was so impressed by him that he asked him what he would like. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai famously asked for 3 things. He wanted a doctor for Reb Tzadok, who fasted 40 years. He wanted that he should spare the dynasty of Reb Gamliel, which is the dynasty of David HaMelech. And he wanted the last thing, 10 li Yavna v'chachameh. He should spare the city of Yavna and its sages, which means he should not destroy Yavna and its sages, which Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as Vespasian agreed. There were people very critical of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Gemara says either Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Yosef coined the phrase, they paraphrased the pasuk, Meshiv Chachamim Achar. Sometimes Hashem takes the mind of the wise and he sets it backwards. And they applied this pasuk to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that he wasn't thinking. Vespasian says, I'll do whatever you want, give me your wish. He should have said, leave Jerusalem alone, don't touch the Beis HaMikdash, go back to Rome. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai thought he will never agree to that. He needed to ask for something small. But they were very upset at Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The truth is, and you have to understand this, the Gemara says in Brachas, Daf Chaf Zayin, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was very sick. He was at his deathbed. He lived very long. Gemara says for the first 40 years of his life, he was engaged in business, commerce. Second 40 years, he learned. The last 40 years, he taught. So he had a very productive life. When he was on his deathbed, his students came to visit him. And they saw that he was sobbing. So they asked him, Rebbe, why are you sobbing? And he says, when a person leaves this world, there's 2 pathways. One path leads to Gan Eden, the paradise, and one path leads to Gehenna, to purgatory. I don't know which path I am going to be led through. So I'm sobbing. And then the last moment, before he breathed his last breath, he said, prepare a chair near the bed for Chizkiah Melech Yehuda. Chizkiah, the king of Yehuda, who apparently came to escort him. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai passed away. Now the question is, did he really feel that he's going to go to Gehenna? I mean, if he's not going to Gan Eden, who is it made for? It's like the old joke. They say that in paradise, God takes out a can of tuna and feeds it to Moses, and the next day sardines, and the next day another can of tuna, and then jarred gefilte fish. Finally, after a few months, Moshe Rabbeinu says, can the menu in Gan Eden be a little more diversified? He says, listen, for one person, does it pay to cook? You want the kitchen, you go to Gehenna, there's a lot of action over there. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, humility doesn't mean that if I'm tall, I say I'm short. And if I'm smart, I say I'm dumb. That's not humility, it's stupidity, you'll forgive me. Humility doesn't mean I lie about my qualities or my virtues. Humility means putting them in perspective, contextualizing them. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai really thought that he deserves purgatory after the life he lived. Well, he knew who he was. It's a very difficult thing to understand, and he's sobbing that he may end up in purgatory. The answer is that sometimes when a person comes to the end of their life, generally when we get older and more introspective, you may have lived a wonderful and amazing life, but sometimes there's one story that eats up on me, and I can't forgive myself for it. And even if a person looks back and they know they tried their best and they did many good things, sometimes there is that one choice I made, or that one decision that happened, or that one occurrence that I may have not dealt with correctly, and precisely at the end of one's life that really comes up. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew his virtues and he knew his greatness, but there was one story that sat on his chest for many, many years. And that was the moment he met Vespasian. Because Vespasian said, what do you want? I will do it for you. And Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef in later generations felt that he made a terrible, terrible error. He was given the opportunity to save Jerusalem, to save the Beis HaMikdash. Obviously, he was trying his best, but he asked himself, am I indirectly responsible for the decimation of Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael, and the Beis HaMikdash because of me? Obviously, it's the Romans who destroyed it, but I was given the opportunity to prevent it. And maybe my fear or my insecurity or my lack of courage, or I was afraid he's going to throw me out of the room, or I wanted him to be good to us, whatever the calculations were, I failed, not just me. I failed my people. I failed my history. I failed my past, my future. I failed Klal Yisrael. Because what he asked for was a doctor for Reb Tzaddik, spare one family and spare Yavne v'Chachameh, the yeshiva. Don't destroy the yeshiva. He says, maybe I do have to go to Gehenna. And at such a moment when you're standing in front of Vespasian, it's not like you could start looking into books and calling your teacher and calling other people to consult. You're right in front of the most powerful person of the world. Soon he would become the emperor of Rome. The Roman Empire was the most powerful empire in the world. And at that moment he made a decision. That's what he asked for. And at this point, before the end of his life, he said, maybe I failed my people and failed them in such a catastrophic and dramatic way. And yet, the last moment before he breathed his breath, he said, prepare a chair for Chizkiah. Chizkiah Melech Yehuda. What's the uniqueness of Chizkiah? Chizkiah Melech Yehuda was the king of Judea. And the Tanakh says that he was one of the most righteous kings, which is not a small thing in the Tanakh, because not many kings made it into the list of righteousness. Tanakh is very honest about how leadership corrupts people, and especially the kings of yore. Chizkiah was one of the special ones, the pure ones. And Sancheriv, the Assyrian king, came and he exiled the 10 tribes in the north of Israel, and they have been lost. Until today, nobody knows what happened to millions of Jews who were assimilated. I don't know if you know, but there's close to 50 or 100 million people around the whole world who claim that they're connected to the 10 tribes of Israel. It's fascinating. Go figure. The Gemara says when Mashiach comes, the 10 tribes are going to come back. Rabbi Akiva disagreed, and the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Shafke Rabbi Akiva lechasiduse. Rabbi Akiva became ois chassid when he said that. He abandoned his piety for saying they're not going to come back. Usually Rabbi Akiva was the defender of the Jewish people. Chizkiah, Sancheriv wanted that Chizkiah, the king of Yehuda, should also surrender. But he refused. He refused to surrender. And he did not give in to Sancheriv, and Yerushalayim remained in the Jewish hands. So now when Chizkiah came to say goodbye to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was telling him, you did not destroy Jerusalem. I'm here to escort you. I'm the one who protected you. You saved Yerushalayim. Why? Because what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did, and what Vespasian didn't realize is, Vespasian thought this old Jew is asking for Yavna. Big deal. I'll give him Yavna. Yavna is a city. It's like 15 miles from Yerushalayim, 20 miles, maybe 12, around 12 miles, I think, 20 kilometers. Not far from Yerushalayim. And that's where the center of learning was, of scholarship, of the yeshivas, of the Sanhedrin. Big deal. I'll give it to them. Well, there's no power here. What Vespasian didn't realize was that by fulfilling this request, he was actually signing his own obituary. He was actually stamping his own death certificate, Rome's death certificate, and guaranteeing the eternity of the Jewish people. Because what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood was that with a Beis HaMikdash, without a Beis HaMikdash, maybe will the Jews be able to survive? It's a very, very powerful question, without Yerushalayim, etc., etc. But he knew one thing, that if they have Yavne v'Chachameh, if they will continue to have the Torah and the mitzvahs, and Yiddishkeit will be alive, ultimately they'll be able to return. Ultimately there will be a nation. So by Vespasian said, yeah, I'll give you Yavne v'Chachameh, he didn't realize that in a few hundred years Rome would be gone. Where's the Roman Empire today? It's in Wikipedia. That's where it is. You could check it out. There's an entry with Vespasian, and a statue of Vespasian, and a monument of Vespasian, and what is it called? A bust of Vespasian. We don't have a bust of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We don't have a bust of Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't have a sculpture of Avram Avinu, not of David HaMelech, not of Shlomo HaMelech. If you want to see David, you have to go to Michelangelo's Florence. If you want to see the Rambam, you got to go to Cordoba in Spain, the Maharal in Prague. In the Jewish place, you have no monuments and no bust of anybody. But you know what we have? They want to destroy the monuments. Because that's what they are. They have monuments. You have a monument of Titus, a monument of Vespasian. The pharaohs mummified themselves in Egypt. What the Jewish people, though, have is the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We don't need a bust of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. You have the soul of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We learn his Torah every day. Like him and Rabbi Akiva and Avram Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu. So by asking for Yavna v'chachameha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai guaranteed that literally almost 2,000 years later, it's close to 2,000 years, Rome is gone. But the Jewish people are vibrant, not just survived, but thrived. But at that moment, he was full of doubt. So Chizkiah came to tell him, you weren't wrong, you were right. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Because he lived in that era, he literally watched the transition from Geula to Galus, from independence to exile, from Jewish people having their own land, their own spiritual epicenter, their own independence, spiritual, and to some degree, and not political. They were under Rome already for a while, and they were under Greece at some point. The Hashmonaim liberated them from Syria, Greece, but then the Romans took over, but they still had a spiritual and physical center they can call their own. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saw that all change. He saw it all go down. First of all, he saw untold amounts of death and suffering, Jews being sold as slaves in the hundreds of thousands, to the point Josephus says that the price of a Jewish slave was less than $1. Imagine you can buy a slave for less than $1. There were so many. That's how cheap the value of a Jew was. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saw all of this, and he was the leader. And he felt the responsibility to guarantee the eternity of the Jewish people and of Judaism in that era, which was one of the blackest and darkest eras in Jewish history, maybe the blackest and darkest era till the Holocaust. Both in the sheer amounts of death and the catastrophe that took over the collective people. And the catastrophe continued because Rome did not just go home and say, okay, we destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, now live in peace. 60 years later, there would be a Bar Kokhba revolt in 132, and that revolt would not end well. It was a disaster, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai already passed away by then. Rabbi Akiva was then by the Bar Kokhba revolt. At such a moment in history, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood you have to create students who will become leaders. You see, in a way, it's easier to create students than it's to create leaders. To create people who are always dependent on you, who will just always quote you and always call you up and say, what should I do now? What should I do? What should I do? That's not so hard. But to create people who can create people, to create people who are independent, who are visionary, who take responsibility, that's much harder. For this, you have to empower them. There are leaders who create students, but the greatest of great create leaders. And what does it mean they create leaders? They create people who can take responsibility like they took responsibility. For this, you have to be able to teach them who they are. Not just always come back to the source for guidance. You want to be able to always come back to the source for guidance, but ultimately you find the power and inspiration in yourself. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood that in such a moment in Jewish history, we can't afford to lose any talent. We can't afford to lose any child. We can't afford to lose any creativity. We can't afford to lose any gift. We can't afford to lose any soul. We can't afford to lose any student. We can't. There's too much at stake. It's too precious a time. It's too serious a time to be able to just let people fall down by the sidelines and just say there are always casualties. So therefore, from all the teachers, it was him who taught the path. He went to each of these students and he said, let me teach you who you are. And by showing them who they are, they became those people. This wasn't just a man sitting on a chair throwing compliments. This is a lesson in pedagogy, how you do it. But it must come from a very, very genuine place, because if it's just lip service, if I just say nice things about somebody, and I don't really mean it, I don't really connect to it, I'm just, just throwing out words, but the words are empty. It ultimately doesn't have that effect. And it's not always easy, because people have virtues, people have flaws. People have great qualities, but people also struggle with something. And sometimes those struggles take over, and they're very profound and very deep. And naturally, we gravitate to those struggles. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, if you see a student or a child and you're not ready to be able to see the praise and bring it out, you can't be an educator. You can't be an educator. Go get another job. Sell pencils. Gesundheit. Pencils are not so sensitive. Become the CEO of a great factory. But if you want a factory for souls, a factory for souls, when I come into my house, when I come into my classroom, when I come in contact with anybody, even if there's other things going on, if I cannot identify and zoom in and tune in to the shvacham, to the virtues, to the greatness, to the depth, to the genuineness, to the sincerity, to the authenticity, to the spirituality, to the light present in this student's soul, then I will never be able to be that pedagogue who really, really brings out the best in my child, or the best in my disciple, or the best in my student. There was a wonderful teacher. He passed away a number of years ago, Rabbi David Schrenk. He was the principal of the yeshiva in Adelphia, in New Jersey. So my friend Sruli Besser wrote a biography about him. It's called Just Love Them. Beautiful book. So he shares there a story about Rabbi David Schrenk, Zechariah Levracha. And his wife often tunes into us, Mrs. Trank, so if you're here, welcome. So he shares a very, it's a small story, but it's not small at all. There was a policy in yeshiva in the high school that you're not supposed to smoke. Not such a terrible policy, right? You're not supposed to smoke. Anyway, he walks into somebody's room at night, one of the dormitory walks in, and the boy is sitting on his bed, and he's smoking. And it was like on a very strong policy, if you smoke, you can't be here, it's not good for your health, it's not good for other people's health, secondhand smoke. Rabbi David Schrenk sees, and the boy, they're face to face, and he's smoking, he's like in the middle of middle of that puff. Usually you say, I got it from somebody else, it's al pi Kabbalah, which means I received the cigarette from somebody else. So Rabbi Yochanan looked at him and said, listen, what you're doing is wrong. You're not supposed to smoke. But I also did something wrong. I walked into your room without asking permission. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to walk into somebody's room without knocking. So we both did something wrong. So let's try this again. Okay? I'm leaving the room, and I'm going to fix what I did. And you try to fix what you did. And he walked out, he waited a few minutes, and then he knocked on the door. The boy said, come in. And he came in, and guess what? Abracadabra, there was no cigarettes. I'm sure if you were there, you would still smell it. I don't think he had a spray. It was a boys' dormitory. But that was it. You understand the difference? And that was the end of that. The point was there's a relationship, there's a connection. I'm not trying to catch you. The rules are there for the child. The children are not there for the rules. It's a different approach. Of course rules are important and policies are important. But the rules are there for the children. The children weren't created for the rules. The institution is here to serve the children. The children are not here to fit into my institution. Or as Winston Churchill put it, we create institutions to facilitate our dreams, and then we become prisoners to those institutions that we created for our dreams. You forget what's the means to an end and what's the end. Institutions, policies, rules, they're all means. The end is people, souls, which each soul is a chelik alekam imal mamash. The connection to the people, the attachment, the empowerment, the feeling that they have that they're seen, that they're safe, they're secure, they're soothed, they're cherished, they're valued, they're loved. You want to bring out the best. You want them to fly. You want them to dance till the end of love and beyond. So there was a boy over there who unfortunately stopped keeping Shabbos. And he was quite mischievous and wild. And one Friday night, he managed to break into the principal's office, Rabbi Trank's office, and the keys to his car were on the desk. And he knew Rabbi Trank doesn't need his car for the next 24 hours, it's Shabbos. And he took the keys, and he went to the parking lot Friday night. So one of the other boys says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to the movie theater. I'm going to the movie theater, this and this movie. He says, take me along. He says, no, if I'm sinning already, it's for me. I'm not sinning for other people. It's for mine. So he says, if you don't take me along, I'm going to snitch. I'm going to tell Rabbi Trank. He said, good. I anyway want to be thrown out of this place. Now I'm here because my parents are forcing me. Once I'm thrown out, I'm a chai. I don't have to go back to yeshiva. Wonderful. Please tell him. And it was Friday night. He drove away. Imagine. So he steals a car on Shabbos and he drives away. This fellow was true to his word. He went to Reb David Shrank's home and he told him that this and this boy went into your office, broke into your office, however he picked the lock, took your keys, took your car, and Reb David Shrank listens. It's Friday night, towards the end of the middle of his meal, and he says, where did he go? He says, he went to the movie theater. So Reb David Shrank puts on his coat and he says, do you know where this movie theater is? He says, yeah, it's this and this address. He says, can you tell me how to get there? He says, yeah, we all know how to get there. And he tells him how to get there, but he says it's very far. It's not a few blocks, so you have to walk a mile or 2 miles. It was a Friday night, a winter night in New Jersey. He says, I'm walking. He puts on his coat and he walks to the movie theater. Imagine. He comes to the movie theater, he goes in, there's a booth, you gotta pay, whatever you gotta pay, I don't know, $7, $12, $11. The woman says, how can I help you? He says, I don't want to watch a film, but I have somebody, a close person, he's there and I have to speak to him for a moment. Could you please let me come in without paying? She says, I can't. You can't go into the movie theater without paying. He says, now look at me. Do I look like a guy who came here to watch a movie? I mean, look at me. Look at my hat. Look at my beard. Look at my face. Look at my coat. It's Sabbath. It's Saturday. We don't do this on Saturday. Look, do I look honest? Do I don't look? She says, okay. But how long? He says, just a few minutes. She says, fine, go in. So he goes in. Now, you know, you have many auditoriums with different cinemas. So now he has to find, and it's dark. They're all watching movies. I don't know, there's going to be 5 movies, 10 movies simultaneously. So now he has to start looking for his beloved student. So he goes into one and he's looking and it's pitch dark and you have to see where everybody is sitting. It's not so easy. Big rooms. It was a big theater. And he goes from one to another one, another one. He goes into one of them. He scans the room and he sees he sees him. He sees him sitting, watching the movie. So, you know, you're not allowed to make noise, chas v'shalom, because you're going to disturb people in their moment of heightened tranquility. So he slowly walks over very clandestinely, very silently. Near the boy, there's an empty chair, and he sits down close to him without making even uttering a peep or a sound. Now, you know when you're sometimes sitting, and even if you don't see, you just feel something is happening around you. It's like an energy, right? Because people have energy, like you just feel somebody is near you, even though they didn't touch you. So this boy just felt suddenly that there's somebody near him, so he turns around. Now you can imagine what that moment looked like. It's like, you know, the worst nightmare for yeshiva boy coming true. You know, like his principal is sitting in the movie theater right near him. I'm sorry, watching the movie. Friday night, when you have a better time, right? Reb David Shrank. And he's like, what are you doing here? Says, shh, can't disturb anybody. They're watching a movie. It's very important. What are you doing here? He says, I came to talk to you. He says, what do you want to tell me? So I want to tell you as follows. The popcorn in this particular movie theater is not kosher. So you'll probably want to buy some food and Pepsi and soda to enjoy the movie. Do me a favor, don't buy the popcorn. I love you. Mwah! Have a good night. Enjoy yourself. He gets up and he leaves. He leaves. He goes out of the theater and he starts walking back. He tells the woman, thank you, I'm out. He starts walking back home. It's Friday night. A few minutes later, he feels somebody near him. He turns around. It's the boy. He says, I'm not going to let you walk back alone. I'm walking with you. He says, wonderful, let's walk together. And they walked back a whole way, almost 2 miles, cold. Rabbi Trank didn't mention a word. Not about the movie, not about Shabbos, not about the car. All he did the whole way back was tell him jokes and stories. He was a very funny and charismatic person. If you knew him, he was extremely charismatic and vivacious and loud and passionate and fiery. The Trank family. So that's what he did. They came back to the office. They came back to yeshiva. They had to part ways. He gives him a kiss. He says, have a beautiful Shabbos and hope to see you tomorrow. And he went home. Didn't say a word. The boy told the story and said, at that moment, I knew I was staying in yeshiva and I would never ever violate Shabbos again. I said this once at a shiur, and I was in a store a few days later, one of the stores here in Muncie, one of the supermarkets, I don't know, it was Wesley Kosher or Evergreen, Rockland Kosher, Gedenknicht. Somebody came over to me and said every word was true because I was a yeshiva at the time. He says, I was a yeshiva at the time, I could tell you the name, every word was true. He once said, the Gemara says, Hagboha koina, which means, in halacha, how do I gain ownership over something? How do I gain ownership over something? If something is yours, how do I gain ownership? If it's mobile, if it's real estate, there's different ways. Kesef, shtar, chazaka. But if it's metaltalin, so one of the main ways is hagbah. Hagbah means by uplifting it. You give me your watch, you give me your phone, you give me your jacket. I lift it up, it becomes mine. Of course, if you give consent. I don't mean if I steal it. Hagbah, like by the Kenyan, right? You pick up hagbah, you lift up, and that's how you're kaina. So Rab Trank used to say, you want to be kaina somebody? You want to acquire a student? Hagbah, lift them up. Hagbah, you lift them up, you're kaina them forever. You put them down, you lose them forever. Hagbah, you pick them up, kaina. You think Rabbi Trank didn't know what he did with the car? You think he didn't know about Shabbos? You think it didn't eat him up? But he had to make a choice. He could have looked at this boy and said, never step foot into this place and I'm calling the police and I'll put you in prison. He could have done that. Where would that boy be today? We know where he would be. What he understood was, the boy is disinterested, the boy is having, whatever the boy was going through. But he understood that if there's connection, if there's attachment, if he feels really cherished and loved and believed in, he'll find himself in a different way. There was a boy over there, just reminding myself, there was a boy there who unfortunately, he liked to steal, sometimes he didn't have money, and he would go from dormitory room to dormitory and he would empty out people's pockets and people's drawers. Listen, there's another million positive stories, but I'm just bringing out these stories because it brings out who he was as a mechanech. But you do remind me of a story. You do remind me of a good story. There was a Baal Tshuva who came to learn in a Chabad Baal Tshuva yeshiva. His mother was completely secular. She calls him one day and she says, Jack, how you doing? So he was a real Baal Tshuva, he was very into it. So he said, Mom, today is Yutas Kislev. Yutas Kislev, the day that the Alter Rebbe came out of prison. It's a gewaldige, beautiful day. She says, wonderful. Okay, a few months later she calls, how you doing? He says, today is Yud Beis Tammuz, the day that the Rebbe Rayatz came out of prison. A few months later, Yud Kislev, the day the Mittler Rebbe came out of prison. It's a great day. So she says, I'm so happy you're having a good time, but I'm not so happy about the people you're hanging out with. Why are they all in prison, and why are they coming out of prison, and why are they your friends? Okay. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's an old joke they said, or an old story they said. So this guy was pickpocketing people, and you know what? They busted him. Somebody caught him. And Rabbi Trank, one evening in the yeshiva, he sees like a little commotion. And he hears through the grapevine that they decided, a group of boys, they're going to go into his room at night and they're going to beat him up. He's stealing everybody's money for months and months. They're going to give him a lesson that he's going to remember. They'll give him a beating. He heard about this. So he right away asked one of the boys, tell everybody. He gave him a list that we're having an emergency meeting in my house right after Ma'ariv for all these boys. He brings them to the house. And he tells them a fictional story that Lehoya V'le Nivra. He says, guys, the fellow who stole the money came to me today to apologize. And he said that he feels so horrible and he doesn't know what he took from what. So he gave me all his money and he said, here, give it back to them and let everybody take what they own. And Rabbi Trank takes out from his drawer, he empties out all his dollars and he says, everybody take whatever is yours. And they all took their money, and he promised he'll never do it again. They all left. Now he called in this boy, and he said, listen, I went out on a limb for you. I apologized in your name, it never happened. I gave them back the money that you never gave back to me. I did it this time. Next time, you got to take care of yourself. He changed the person's life. He changed the person's life. Before Rosh Hashanah 1 year, there was Slichas. Before Slichas, I told a story here. Somebody sent me the story in email. Such a moving story. It's a little story that maybe captures 3 books of psychology. A person emailed me. A person went to a wedding, and he sees his 3rd grade Rebbe in school. His 3rd grade Rebbe he sees. And he goes over to him, and he says, Shalom Aleichem, do you remember me? He says, no. He said, I learned in your class, 3rd grade. He said, yeah, it was like probably 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. He says, wow, it's so nice, Mazel Tov, great to see you. What's your name? He says his name. Oh, I remember such a name in my class. He says, what do you do? And he tells his old teacher, I am a 3rd grade teacher, just like you. He says, wow, that's amazing. What inspired you to do that? He says, you. You inspired me when I saw the impact you had on me in 3rd grade. I decided I want to have such an impact on people. He says, what type of impact did I have on you? And this is what he told them. He said, I was a very poor kid. We came from a poor family. All I craved was a watch. My parents couldn't afford a watch. One day I saw that one of my classmates in 3rd grade got this new watch, and he had it in his jacket, in his coat. So by recess, I decided to steal his watch. He came back from playing outside by recess. He walks in, he sees his watch is gone. He starts screaming to the teacher, somebody stole my watch. It's gone, somebody took it. So you turn to all the kinderlach and you say, did somebody by mistake or not by mistake take a watch? It's not yours, it belongs to somebody, please give it back and it's fine. At this point I was too embarrassed. I was too embarrassed to give back the watch. I was afraid of reprisals and revenge and anger and who knows what would happen to me. And you closed the door and you said, somebody needs to give back the watch. It's not fair. Somebody's watch was stolen from me. We can't live like this. And you closed the door and nobody was showing up with the watch because I was too embarrassed. And you said, everybody please line up and close your eyes and empty your pockets onto the desk near you, and nobody's going to see anybody else, and we'll give back the watch. And that's what you did. And you had everybody's eyes closed, including mine. So when my watch came out at the desk, there was a big desk, everybody put it on the desk, nobody could see it. And you saved me from public shame and humiliation that day. And I thought you would call me in afterwards and reprimand me for what I did. You didn't even do that. You ignored the story as though it never ever happened. And when I saw how you saved my dignity that day, because I thought I would be shamed for life, I decided I want to go into this field. I want to do for other children what you did for me. And the older teacher was so moved. He says, wow, that is so beautiful. That is so amazing. He says, Rebbe, you're making as though you don't remember the story. You must remember the story. He says, actually, I don't. He says, you mean when you hear my name and you look at me, you don't remember that I stole a watch and you found it and you did not tell me anything and nobody else knew about it? He says, I don't remember. I don't. He says, how can it be? And he says, I also closed my eyes. I also closed my eyes. I didn't know. I didn't know it was you. I just saw a watch and I gave it back. It was irrelevant to me who took it. I said this over before Slichas. A few days later, I'm getting messages from friends in Brazil, one after another. Wow, this story really did it well. I'm like, what happened? There was the president of Brazil was then running for re-elections to be elected again as the president of Brazil. Somebody sent him a clip of me telling the story before Slichas. He had it translated with captions into Portuguese, and he sent it out to 25 million people on his list with an introduction. The introduction was, we have to learn from the Jewish people how to educate children. And then he sent out my clip. I'm talking in English. He had Portuguese captions. So 25 million Gentiles got the story. And he said, this is what the Jews understood how to educate children. But I want to think, but what did this teacher know that other people don't know? What did he know? I could go to 100 seminars. I can read books. right? I can know all the rules. This is something else. This is called aneshama. Emotional, not just intelligence, but love, empathy. It's believing in people. Part of me, I see a child, a ganav. And then, what type of mother does he have? Sure, with his mother, of course he's a ganav. And I knew the baba. And you know what? I remember when my mother used to talk about the grandmother after the war. I remember. You think Google does research on people? Ask your grandmother about after the war. You know, those everybody, today she's a ganze Rebbetzin. We remember what she looked like. A ganze Rav geworden. In 1947, I'll tell you what happened in the DP camps. So of course, the Einikel is a ganef. It's very easy to go there. And you know what? Some of it may even be true. But what he understood was, I can analyze he's a thief, and why is he a thief? Everyone has toxicity. We all have darkness. It's called a Yetzer Hara, whatever it looks like and whatever the reason is. He had then a choice, and the choice is, what am I going to connect with? Which world am I going to live in? Am I going to live in the world of negativity, or am I going to live in the world of light, of brightness? And that changed everything. The most important thing is he showed the child which world he can live in. The child every day can look in the mirror and say, I'm a filthy thief. Or the child could wake up, look in the mirror and say, I'm worthy of this teacher's infinite dignity and dedication. Why am I so worthy? Maybe I'm not just a filthy thief. Maybe there's something so valuable about me. That attachment, that connection is at the core of everything. And that's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was responsible for the complete destruction of the Jewish epicenter. And exile is going to begin. And Jews are not going to have anything that they used to have to hold on to. Pesach is going to be different. No Beis HaMikdash, no Korban Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, everything will be different. Imagine Chanukah, they used to go to the Beis HaMikdash, they lit the menorah there in the Beis HaMikdash, it was different. This year was Chanukah at the Kaisel, so the Rav of the Kaisel, the Rav of Rabbi Rabinovich, yeah. So he honored me to light the menorah. So he says, this is the closest physical proximity, the closest place to where the Chashmonayim lit the menorah the first Chanukah. It was the closest place, but it was not in the Harabayis. It was down by the plaza of the Kaisel. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, we can't afford to lose leaders. We can't afford to lose talent. We can't afford to lose Balei Kishron. We can't afford to lose Neshamas. We can't afford to lose a child. How do you do it? Hayamoyna Shvachim. He brought out that quality. Now let's see, Rabbi Yossi, what do you ask? Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Ashrei Eladetai. Gewaldig. It's almost like his mother gets the credit, not him. His mother must be happy. He's an achasel. But the truth is, he was saying something very deep here. Ashrei Eladetai. He doesn't even say mother or father. He says when he was given birth to, and the one who gave birth to him. When a child is born, and we all know this feeling, especially I'm speaking to a crowd here in this room who knows this feeling better than I'll ever be able to describe. When you look at that baby, a few seconds, a few minutes, even a few days, a few weeks, a few months after they're born, what do you see? You see everything. Everything is there, right? I remember when my first son, Mendel, was born, so I was in the hospital, it was Friday night, he was born Erev Shabbos Bein Hashmashas, which made it for a very interesting situation, because you can't do a bris on Friday, because it's the seventh day. You can't do a bris on Shabbos, because it may have been Friday. So you got to do the bris almost on day 10, Sunday. But the midwife said it wasn't Bein Hashmashas, it was already Friday night. But the hospital said that it was Bein Hashmashas, they didn't use the word Bein Hashmashas. Anyway, it was Lebedik and Freilich. So I remember he came into the world and I made Kiddush for my wife afterwards. And then when I started to talk, I said to her, I want to be so careful with the words I'm saying in this room, because it's the first words this little baby is going to hear. I don't want they should be anything but pure words. We see that child, you just see perfection. You see them pregnant with all potential. But how many of us live up to that moment? That moment when everything is so pure and perfect. No distortion, No negative influence, not from a parent, not from a home, not from a community, not from a school, not willingly, not unwillingly. It's just like a gift. It's straight from heaven. right? It's still heavenly. You could see the soul. And you want to retain that. But unfortunately, many of us at the time we're 5 already, our heart has been broken into 1,000 pieces. By the time you're 8, your heart may have been broken into 3,000 pieces. By the time you're 22, some of us are just in a different place. Ashrei yoiladetoi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya was a person that he lived out that moment of birth. That moment of yoiladetoi, that moment of birth, when you're pregnant with all that potentiality, pre any distortion, pre any brokenness, pre any trauma, pre any toxicity. That's what he lived out. He saw himself that way and he actualized it. So he was saying something very, very powerful about him. When I look at a child, can I see that moment of yoiladatai? That's the moment I want to see. I want to be able to go back to that moment of yoiladatai. You know, people often talk about their children or grandchildren or students. I get a lot of emails with very negative terms. My daughter became such a chutzpah. A mother writes to me, my daughter had the best midas in the house. The best midas. And now she's 17 years old. She's obnoxious and rude and disgusting. She became narcissistic and self-centered, stopped keeping Shabbos. And she's being very tough with her. So I wrote back to this mother. I said, listen, I don't know and I'm very sorry, but I just want to ask a question. You say that till she was 17, she had the most amazing midas in your house. You think suddenly at the age of 17, a soul of the Gestapo went into your daughter? And your daughter said, you know what, from today I'm going to destroy my mother and father and brothers and sisters and the whole mishpach, I'm just going to be destructive? Is it possible that this refined soul just suddenly became the most evil human being in your community? I highly doubt it. You're responding to your pain, which I understand, but maybe it's so important to respond to what is really going on, even though you may not know and she may not know. So she says, how do you know you're right? Maybe you're wrong. I said, maybe, but let me tell you something. If you want to error in life, I know which side I want to error on. Remember, if you error on the side of not blaming the child, but understanding what happened to them, even if it turns out that you made a mistake, what happened? You show them a little extra love when you shouldn't have. Okay, but if you error on the other side, when you blame them for things that they should not be blamed for, and then you put them down, and that's the side you're erring on, and then one day you figure out you will never forgive yourself for destroying that person. Maybe I'm wrong, but you want to know which side to err. It's always good to err on one side rather than another side. The worst came to worst is, I underestimate how horrible you are, my daughter. You know what? I smile to you a little more. Nebach, okay, I'll go to Gehenna for smiling. Sure. The other way is a little more dangerous. How did I get into this? Can I see the child from that moment of Yeladatai? Can I see the child? Then there's Reb Shimon ben Hassan al Yirei Chet, fearing sin. Very important. He doesn't say fears punishment. He fears sin. Sometimes a person abstaining from negative things is because of the consequences, the punishment. But then it's a much more superficial fear, because basically the punishment is coming in the future. Right now there's tremendous enjoyment, so who knows what outweighs what. And I think, let me enjoy now, I can always make up later. But if it's Yirei Chet, if what's bothering me is the separation itself. Taking a marriage, a husband who doesn't do anything wrong. Why? Because he's afraid his wife is going to find out and there's going to be a punishment. If he could make sure she doesn't find out. And even if she does, maybe he can repair. And even if she does, but now it's so amazing, he may fall. She may fall. But if Yirei Chet, if what's bothering you is not the punishment, it's that the relationship is going to be ruined. It's two of a special relationship to ruin. I'm afraid of losing such a relationship. It's not about what's going to happen in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, if somebody's going to find it, if I could fix it or not. That's the Chiddush of Reb Shimon ben Hassan. It's a different type. When we say Yireh Shamayim, what does it mean? I'm afraid because of a punishment? No, the sin itself is what I'm afraid of. The relationship is too precious that I don't want to disrupt it. But now, let's see the last point, and here we bring it together and we come to the last point, Be'ezer Hashem. And that is, you see Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai praises Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus a cistern that retains everything. Abba Shaul prays Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, who is the ever-increasing spring, because here you have the two personality types. One personality type is somebody who could retain and transmit. The other one is creativity. It's like the sun and the moon. The sun is consistent and stable. The moon is always, we call it lunatic, right? Lunacy. A lunar personality. It's always changing, waxing and waning, disappearing, coming back. There's two types of personalities. Rebbe Elazar ben Hyrcanus is Borsur Sheina Ma'abetipa. Tradition. It's the ability to hold on to everything and not lose anything, not even a drop. Rebbe Elazar ben Arach's abilities, Kamayin HaMizgaber. Creativity, innovation, newness, curiosity. He took the old and he transformed and he interpreted and he explained and he expounded. And both are crucial in life and both are crucial in education. I want my child to be able to have solid, stable values that don't change, like a cistern that's plastered, that holds on to all its truths. But yet, we want people to grow and be creative. And in Judaism too, you have this solid tradition that doesn't change with time. That's Borsur Sheina Ma'abetipa. But then there's the Kamayin HaMizgaber, the ability to be fresh, the ability to be vibrant, the ability to be able to see the newness and not just become stuck, which often depletes somebody from inspiration. But now look, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, go and see which midah toiva is the best midah, they argue. Rabbi Eliezer says to have a good eye. Rabbi Yeshua says a good friend. Rabbi Yosef says a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon says you see the future. And Rabbi Elazar says a good heart. What's the argument? So I want to share with you, and this I think will be our last point, a teaching from the Bnei Yissaschar. Bnei Yissaschar was one of the great Hasidic masters, Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov in Poland, has a famous Hasidic work, Bnei Yissaschar or Bnei Yissaschar, depends how you pronounce it. And what's this argument? He says, go find what's a derech toiva, and they're all arguing what it is. So the Bnei Yissaschar says, how do we understand the nature of the argument? And he gives a fascinating interpretation. And I want to share it. I'm just going to share a few points briefly. It's a little bit of a deep idea, but just one or 2 points I want to share with you. Be'ezer Hashem. Take a look in the last paragraph of your source sheet, please. You should all know these psukim. Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashamayim, ve'es haaretz. Right? You all know the psukim. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was chaotic, and there was darkness, and Hashem's spirit hovered above the water. Hashem said, let there be light, and there was light. First creation, light. Hashem saw the light was good. And he separated between the light and the darkness. Hashem called light day, and darkness he called night. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, the Gemara says that if you see in your dream the letter Tes, if you see in your dream the letter Tes, it's a good sign. Siman Tov. Why? Why? Because what's the first letter in Torah that begins with a Tes? Tov. Good. So the first letter in Torah with a Tes, there's other letters with a Tes, but the first one with a Tes is Tov. So if you see a Tes in the dream, it's good. What do you see from here, says the Bnei Yissaschar? That every word, the first time it's mentioned in the Torah, that ultimately has the most powerful significance when it comes to this word. Just like Tes, there's other Teses. But if the first time the Torah uses a Tes as Tov, it means somehow Tes is good. So this means that the first word the Torah uses about anything, the first time, you have the ultimate core, because that's like the beginning. So the Bnei Yissaschar says, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, go find me the best derech Toiva, they said, Tov, you want to know what good is? Look at the first time it says Tov in the Torah. The first time it says good in the Torah, that's the first goodness. If that's the first goodness, it's the primary goodness. It's like the mother of all goodness. It's going to say Tov many other times. But the first time it says Tov, that's like the mother of all goodness. That's like the beginning, the genesis. So if we want to find out what's the derech toiva, let's look at the first toiv and see what it's about. So he says, this is now, all the opinions revolve around this. What's the first toiv in the Torah? Vayara lekim es ha'or ki toiv. God saw that light was good. What's the function of light? Light allows us to see. Light gives us perspective. If there's no light, everything could be in the room, but I can't see. Eyes need light to be able to see. Ears, nose, I could smell in darkness, I can hear in darkness. Sometimes even better, I could think in darkness. I can move my hands and my feet, but to see, I need light. So Rabbi Eliezer says the first light is seeing. So he says, what's the best thing? Ayin toiva. A good eye. It's how you see things. What do you see in people? What do you see in yourself? There's people who forgive. There's people who lift up. Ayin toiva. The hosta guta oig, a good eye. In Parshas Tazria, there's an expression, Loi hafach hanega es einoi. The leprosy did not transform its look. Literally, einoi means its look. In other words, it still maintains the same disconfiguration. But the Chidush Yerim says, Loi hafach hanega es einoi means the one who's a leper didn't change his eye, his ayin. The way I look at people. The way I look, instead of an ayin ra, an ayin toiva. We spoke about Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai, bringing out the goodness in people. What's the opposite of that? Lashon hara versus, what does Lashon hara do? What does Lashon hara do? Why is the Torah so opposed to it? It's not just a decree that is just a decree you have to do it and just put a zipper on your mouth. It's a way of living. There's people, when they talk about people, they bring out the best in the people. There's people, when they talk about people, they just know how to bring out the worst. It's what the mirror I'm holding up to you. They hold up a mirror, you look at it and say, wow, I'm beautiful. Or do I make sure to always hold up a mirror and say, wow, I'm so disgusting and ugly. Which person am I going to be in this world? And it's how I use my words constantly. How I talk about myself, I talk about people I know, I talk about people I don't know. Lashon hara doesn't mean if I have to correct a situation or save people from a very dangerous situation. It's not Lashon hara. Fakert, that may be the best thing to do when you have a danger in a community, etc. But Lashon hara means when I become that type of person, where's my juice? Where's my chiyus, my islavas? I'm busy bringing out always the worst in people. And in myself and in my loved ones. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is the exact opposite. So Rabbi Eliezer says, what's the best midah? Ayin toiva. I do want to make mention of a very special friend who passed away on Friday, Rabbi Michal Schnitzler. Michal Schnitzler was an embodiment of this. When he came into a room, his eyes and his soul sensed immediately who's in pain, and he knew how to go over to them, give them a hug, and lift them up. Even whenever he met me, always shower me with compliments. Why? He just felt such an urge and yearning to inspire, to empower, to uplift people. You see somebody, bring out the best in them. That's the type of person he was. Reb Michal Schnitzler, Zechrona Livracha. He did it with his songs, he did it with his humor, he did it with his conversation, most importantly, he did it with his heart. People make a mistake, they think Lashon Hara or Lashon Toiv is just laws. It doesn't begin with laws, it begins with who you are inside. The halacha flows from the inside, it's not the other way around. It's not like, I hate your guts, but Lashon Hara! You're a sick person, drop Lashon Hara! It's still good not to speak, whatever. But it's about cultivating the personality. That's at least equally important and significant. So Rabbi Eliezer says, what's the midah toiva? Ayin toiva. That the light should be good. Light is good. When you see light in a person, in a situation, that's what ayin toiva means. I forgive you. I see the light in you because I see the light in myself. That's the first opinion. Says the Bnei Yisachar, what's the second opinion? Rabbi Yeshua says, chaver toiv. Rabbi Yeshua says, what's toiv? When you have a good friend. Where did he get that from? So the Bnei Yisachar says, listen to this fascinating vart. He says as follows. Take a look at the pasuk before. The earth was engulfed in darkness. Let there be light. So who became the friend for the darkness? The light. The earth was engulfed in darkness, and God said, it's not fair. The darkness needs a friend. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Hello, light, my old friend. I just thought of that. The darkness needs a friend. He says it. That's where they got it from, those two Jewish boys. Shimon and Garfinkel. They got it from the Meir Soscha. Oh my God. Okay. He literally says, God said darkness needs a friend. Nasa or chaver lachaishach. Darkness needs a friend. What a beautiful. So the second opinion, who's the second person? Rabbi Yeshua says, you know what you need? You need a good friend. You know why? Because we have darkness. And what does it mean to have a good friend? Somebody with whom I can share my darkness. That's the definition of a friend. And they can then embrace me with my darkness. If it's a good friend whom I can only say the nice things about myself, that's not a friend. Very good. Very good. The only friend in Chumash is in Parshas Vayeshev. Yehuda has a friend, Shmoi Chira. The only friend. All other relationships in Chumash are familial, or master, slave, king, subject, brothers, of course, parents, children, the only, and what do we see there? What happens? Yehuda does something, and he doesn't want anybody to know. And who does he share it with? His friend. Because a relationship is always about sharing my vulnerable parts. Saying, hey, I'm the best guy. Look, I did this. I don't need a friend. I can tell that to anybody in the show. A good friend is somebody that my darkness finds a friend in this person. So that's what he says, Kitoiv. Of course the light is good. You know why the light is good? Because it's a friend. It has a friend. The light has a friend, and therefore the darkness has a friend. And they befriend each other. Then you have the third opinion. The third opinion, Rabbi Yossi, he says, Shachen Toiv, a good neighbor. What's the idea of a good neighbor? He says, take a look. It says, Vayara lekim esa'erki toiv, vayavdel Elokim ben ha'or ben ha'chayshach. God saw that the light was good, and what did he do? He created a boundary. Who said, good fences, good neighbors make? Robert Frost, also the Bnei Yissaschar. They're all learning Bnei Yissaschar. Good neighbors, it was just a joke. Good neighbors, good fences, good neighbors make. What's the power of a good neighbor? Boundaries. Not boundaries that you're in New Zealand and I'm here, then we're not neighbors. But it's even in a relationship, in a marriage. There's respect for boundaries. I'm not going to choke you with my love. There's boundaries. A shachin toiv, a good neighbor. So he says that's what Hashem does with the good. He sees it's good and he creates a boundary with the darkness, so they become shchenim. That's a shachin toiv. So you have Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus says ayin toiva. Rabbi Yeshua says chavet toiv. There's a shachin toiv. Reb Shimon says haroyes hanoilad. He who has vision, has foresight. So you right away see, again, he uses the word roya, sees, doesn't understand, but sees. Everybody could understand the future, but to see it like it's vivid is a whole different experience. We all know that. Everybody understands when I eat 3 pieces of cheesecake at the bris, we all know what's going to happen. But I don't see it. All I see is cheesecake. That's the problem, right? If I could see the future, I would look even better than I look. Can you imagine? I'm working on it. I'm working on it after Pesach. After Pesach. Where I was Pesach, it was a dangerous place. Used to be Pesach, you lost 10 pounds. And today, where I go Pesach, it's bad news. Because they serve during my speeches. When do you think they serve food?
Most people won't get their money's worth.
Okay, it's just a little humor. Let's finish here. Chevra. So he says, it's right here, it says, Vayara lekim esa'erki toiv vayavdel. So Rashi says, Hashem saw that the original light, was the light you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. But Hashem saw that light will be abused, so he hid it away for the future. So you see, Royes HaNoilad, he saw the future, and that's why he hid it away. That's the opinion of Royes HaNoilad. And then the last one, Rabbi Eliezer ben Aruch says, Leiv Toiv, a good heart. Where is that? So he says, now you have to do counting with me. Let's go to the first word, Bereshis, and let's count how many words are there from Bereshis till Toiv. Let's go. Bereshis is 1. Bara is 2. Elokim is 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Lave. And what's the next? Toiv. So there's 32 words from Bereshis, etc. That's lave. 32. Lave. And the next word is toiv. So Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch said, you're all giving me pulpulim. But read how it works. All the words are leading up to toiv. What's good? A good heart. That's the definition of good. So when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai heard that, he says he includes everything else you say. Because you all focused on just that word toiv and you asked, what is toiv? But he showed you that everything till that point is all leading up to that toiv. So it's true, you all learned your toiv from Torah. And they're all amazingly powerful, good things that are mothers of other good things. But the toiv of Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch includes also your toivus. Why? Because he does bichlal dvarav. He includes all the words from the beginning of Torah till toiv. So therefore he includes all the toivus that you said, because he includes all the words up to toiv. Says the Bnei Yissaschar. Now we'll understand the secret of Lag BaOmer, which is the 18th day of Iyar. Because he says essentially, the 18th day of, Lag BaOmer is the 18th day of Iyar, which is the 33rd day of the Omer. Right. So he says we know that the Sefira days are 49 days. The gematria of 49 is Leiv Toiv. Lamed Beis is 32. Toiv is 17. 9 and 6 and 2. That's 17. How much is 32 and 17? So 42 and 7 is 49. So really the focus of the 49 days of Sefira is the cultivation of Leiv Toiv, the good heart. 32 plus 17, together that's 49. That's why Chazal say, Ein Toiv Ela Torah, also in Pirkei Avos, Ki lekach Toiv nasati lechem Toirasi al tazoivu. Torah is called Toiv. And it says that Hashem hid, it says in Zohar, Hashem hid the light in Torah. Torah also has what's called in Zohar, Lamed Beis Nesivos Chachma, the 32 pathways of Chachma. So to really understand Torah, Hashem says you need a Leiv Toiv, you need a good heart. It says Rabbi Yishmael Omer, B'shloish Esrei Midas HaTorah Nedreshes Behen. Rabbi Yishmael says there's 13 ways of interpreting Torah. So the Noam Elimelech says, Rabbi Shmuel b'shloish esrei midas haTorah. Only when you have your own Yud Gimel Midas Harachimim in yourself, then haTorah Nedreshes. Then you could really expound Torah. When somebody learns Torah but they don't have this Leiv Toiv, they don't have this sense of attachment, of connection, so then it's just information. So I could learn, I can discipline, I could scream, I could be zealous, I can be afraid, I can instill fear in others. But the core of connection is missing, the Leiv Toiv is missing. The whole hachana, the preparation to Shavuos is 49, which is Leiv and Toiv. If I don't have the heart, or even if I have a heart, but it's not a good heart, it's a harsh, stone-like heart, you can't have that Matan Torah. You can't have this Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai inspiring students like this. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a different type of relationship. Yeah, you may be following all the rules and all the policies, but you don't have the Hagbah, kind of the lifting up of a child, the lifting up of a student that comes from a heart, feeling a heart. That's a preparation. And sometimes I can't teach that through words. Somebody doesn't feel it. They don't see it in somebody's eyes and somebody's heart. It's very, very difficult. I guess we could learn it, but it's hard to learn, especially when my comfort zone and my manuals tell me to go the other way. So the Leiv Toiv is the preparation for Shavuos. Says the Bnei Yissaschar. So after 32 days of the Omer, you're finished with Leiv. Now you start with Toiv. So Lag BaOmer is the first day of Toiv. Vayara lekimes ha'or ki Toiv. After you got till the word ki is 32, so that's the first 32 days of Sfiras ha'Omer is till the word Toiv, that's Lamed Beis. And now is Lamed Gimel, now starts the Toiv, the revelation of the Ein Toiv Ela Torah, the revelation of the light, the Toiv HaGanuz, the inner good. Once I cultivate that heart, now where I look, I see light. I see it in people, I see it in myself, I see it in children, I see it in students. Even if the light is ganuz, it's concealed. When he concealed it, but I start identifying it and revealing it. He says that starts on Lag BaOmer. Reb Shimon ben Yochai's yahrzeit is Lag BaOmer. Who is Reb Shimon ben Yochai? Reb Shimon ben Yochai is the one who revealed Sefer HaZoyar. The word Zoyar means light. Zoyar means radiance, light. He revealed the light of Pnimiyus HaTorah. In Torah itself, you have the Nigla of Torah, the revealed part of Torah, which are the halachas, the laws, the structures, which is the guf, the structure of Torah, like the skeleton. And then you have the pnimiyas, the nishmas HaTorah, the light of Torah, the soul of Torah, the core of Torah. That's what Reb Shimon ben Yochai started to reveal with pnimiyas HaTorah. That's why it's the day that Jews build fires, meduras, they make fires which are light, sources of light. Vayara lekimes ha'or ki tov. So how do you celebrate the beginning of the day of Tov? It's through light, through identifying the light in yourself and in every person you come in contact with. Have a wonderful week.
You walk in next week, right?
Next week we're on Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach.